Today we're going to read a story called The Big Dig, Clearing the Manawatu Gorge Slip, and it's written by Wayne Erb. So before we start, I just want to tell you that this story talks about all of the equipment and the problems and all the things that were needed to be able to clear the slip on the road during this gorge slip. So let's start. 19 August 2011, a winter's night, and heavy rain is pelting down, soaking into the steep hillside of the Manawatu Gorge. Eventually, the ground can hold no more water. A torrent of rocks and mud pours down, burying the highway and spilling into the Manawatu River. When road workers see the slip the next morning, they say it will take a week to clean up. They are wrong. Getting the highway open will take over a year and an incredible amount of work. It's one of the biggest slips in New Zealand history. The Manawatu Gorge. The Manawatu Gorge cuts a deep course between the Ruahine and Tararua ranges. The first road was built in 1871 and rail connected Manawatu to Hawke's Bay in 1891. Although an important route, the gorge has seen trouble before. In 2004, a storm led to several landslides, which closed the road for 75 days. But this latest slip was something else, and work began straight away. Diggers were used to dump rock into removal trucks, but as they worked, more rocks and earth slid down. Meanwhile, detours for the traffic were established over the Saddle Road and the Pahiatua track. Travel took up to 20 minutes longer on these narrow, winding routes. Trucking firms faced higher fuel costs. People needed to leave earlier for work and trips. Everyone wanted the road cleared quickly, but the problem was about to get worse. So here we have a map, and we can see this part down here is a zoomed in piece of the map. So that's this little piece here between Ashurst and Woodville. They've zoomed in, and we've got Ashurst here and Woodville here, and this little bit in the middle here is the Manawatu Gorge, the road that travels through, and here is Saddle Road that they were talking about being the alternative route. I'd like you to pause the video here and have a go at reading this next paragraph of text or this next page of text on your own, and then we'll read it together. Well done for reading it on your own. Now let's read through it together. The slip gets bigger. In October, torrential rain sent even more debris crashing down. 20,000 cubic metres of it. That's equal to 8 Olympic swimming pools. David McGonigal, the New Zealand Transport Agency's State Highways Manager, stopped work because it was too dangerous to operate machinery at the base of the slip. No work could be done for 2 weeks. As well as delays, David also faced a quandary. The road couldn't be reopened until the hillside was stabilised. But how should this be done? A team of engineers and geologists examined the slip and used lasers to map the hillside. They learned there was more unstable material higher up. This meant the loose rock and soil would need to be dug out from the top down. The experts decided to cut the landslip into a series of benches, a bit like giant steps. These benches would stabilise the hillside, reducing the risk of future slips. So workers formed a track through farmland and bush to reach the top of the slip. Then it was time to bring in the Bandit. The Bandit was a grunty bulldozer whose scoop had been replaced with a big winch and heavy-duty cables. It was taken to the hilltop where it was half buried in the ground so that it wouldn't budge, no matter what. Heavy diggers were then lowered down the unstable slope while the Bandit held them in place with its mighty cables. On the right-hand side here we can see some pictures, and this one right down here, they are burying the Bandit bulldozer. So just before we start reading this next page, I want you to have a look at that diagram in the top left-hand corner up here. So up here we've got a bit of a diagram, and it's a cross section of the slip. So that's talking about if we cut our mountain in half, what would it look like? So we've got one half of the mountain on this side, one half of the mountain on this side, and the river that runs down the middle. This cross section shows progress by February 2012. Almost half the debris had been removed, and the hillside had been cut into a series of benches. So here's the road under all the debris. So this is the 20,000 cubic metres that still hasn't been removed yet. And this is the 170,000 cubic metres that they managed to remove between December 2011 and the 29th of February 2012. And if we look closely, we can even see the benches that they were talking about in the article. Here's another chance for you to pause, and I'd like you to read the paragraph about hard work. When you've finished reading, you can click play again and we can go through it together. Hard work. In the days before Christmas, everyone was still hard at work. At road level, a 20-ton digger scooped up great masses of rock and earth. A loader dumped the loose material into trucks which came and went up to 250 times a day. Because there was so much activity, people were assigned as spotters. They used binoculars to scan the hillside for any unstable boulders and had radios to warn of danger. Changeable weather made working on the slip tough. David McGonigal says that some days, gale force winds and rain would replace the sunshine in a matter of minutes. The team was up there 100 metres above the road using heavy machinery, completely open to the full force of the wind, he recalls. When it rained, the slip's surface turned to mush. Workers did all the right things to stay safe, but it was still tough going. The site was pretty hard to access, David says. It was a 15-minute climb up a steep slope. Crews had to use a rope to pull themselves up. We had to chopper in our supplies, even the portable toilets. A long wait. We'll read this one together. In early 2012, the public was told that the highway would remain closed until the middle of the year. It was a long wait, but the road had to be made safe. Some people were affected more than others. Businesses in Woodville had fewer customers. Ashurst residents had to cope with all the extra traffic that was detoured through their town. These roads weren't built to cope with heavy traffic, and they needed frequent repairs. The third and fourth benches were dug into the hillside, and after that the bandit was no longer needed. This meant that the machines had to keep going and dig all the way down to the road. There was no other way off the hillside. And so the digging continued. By the time the slip was finally cleared, 370,000 cubic metres of rock and earth had been trucked away. That doesn't mean anything. Imagine Wellington Stadium filled with so much dirt that it spilled out over the roof. One step forward, one back. I'm looking at that image there and I can see the benches that they've been describing, how they've been cut into the slip there. It's quite impressive. By May, the team had benched the hillside and cleared the slip from the road. Shortly afterwards, workers levelled a stretch of temporary road. This meant that cars could travel in one direction only while the repair work wrapped up. It sounds like the end of the story, but it wasn't. Heavy winter rain caused the Manawatu River to rise 7 metres above its normal level. The floodwater washed away the rock beneath the temporary road. Once again, no one could drive through the gorge. Several bridges had to be completely replaced before the road could reopen. Other teams worked to reduce the risk of new slips. They used a method called rock anchoring, inserting large steel rods into the slip face to help secure it. They also laid netting to catch falling rocks and dug channels to drain rainwater into the river. It's very clever. The all clear. The Manawatu Gorge Road was reopened to some traffic in August 2012. It was open to all traffic in September, but still the work wasn't quite over. There was a minor rockfall further along the gorge, And so the highway was closed for one more day while crews blasted large boulders into smaller pieces so they could be removed. Finally, 15 months after the first landslip, David McGonigal announced that the work to restore the Gorge Road was complete, saying no slip in New Zealand's modern history has had such an enormous impact and affected so many people. If we just look at the end of the story here, there's also a glossary, okay? And glossaries are quite important. They are a little bit like a dictionary. They tell us what these words from the story mean, what these key vocabulary mean. So one of the words here we've got is cubic meter. So if we look back in our story, just up here, it's in bold, and it's actually used more than once in the story, but it's telling you what a cubic meter is. So in this sentence, it said, in October, torrential rain sent even more debris crashing down, 20,000 cubic meters of it. So cubic meters, if we go to our glossary, cubic meters is an amount of material that would fit into a cube that is 1 meter across on each side. Another one of our key vocab words here is engineer. So it talked about engineers being people or experts. So a team of engineers and geologists, there's another one of our words, examined the slip and used lasers to map the hillside. So a team of engineers, a person who designs things like roads and buildings, and geologists, a person who studies the earth through its rocks, used lasers, an extremely bright light that can be used for measuring and cutting. And our final word in our glossary, our key vocab, is winch. Can you remember where we talked about a winch? There it is. The Bandit was a grunty bulldozer whose scoop had been replaced with a big winch and heavy-duty cables. So a winch is a machine that hauls things using a cable. So they used that winch to move the Bandit. Okay, so now that we've got to the end of the story, I have some questions for you. So question number 1. Why did everyone want the road cleared quickly? And a lot of our answers to that question were in this first piece of information. Just here. So if you can't remember the answer, have a wee read of this page. You can pause the video here, read this page again, and see if you can answer that question. Why did everyone want the road cleared quickly? Question number 2, and the information is also on this page, so I'm just going to leave it here. How is the main highway better than the detour? Question number 3. What problems resulted from the torrential rain in October? You can pause the video here and find your answer. That's the end of our story now, and well done.